Okay, hello everybody. Hi.
Hi, it's
Hey,
great to be here.
hey,
We're
how's it going?
live now. Hey, hi everyone watching. This is kind of a special episode for me because I am going to be helping Patrick launch his new album out into the world, which I guess is already launched. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it's already out there digitally, right?
yes, exactly. But it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about that, and we're also joined by I'm with Patrick Kearney, great guitarist from Montreal, who I met there a few years ago. And we're also joined by Harry Stafilakis, who is composer and producer on the album, and Adam Pietrkowski. Did I say it right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Better than I say it.
Yeah. Who's our engineer and yeah,
Editor.
editor,
Yeah.
yeah, mixing editor, that kind of stuff. So awesome. But do you want to first tell people a little bit about yourself, Patrick, and also about the album, since that's the focus here?
Sure. Of those of you that don't know me already, I've been playing classical guitar for a few decades. Started when I was a wee lad in a borough of Lachine, borough of Montreal called Lachine. Sorry. And noVae came about as a reaction to my previous album. Previous album was the works of Manuel Maria Ponce, where I explored a lot of the unseen Urtext editions that Tilman Upstock was working on at the time, and delving in a world of harmony, rich textural harmony. And then this kind of led me to do something opposite or something different, something really different. And at the time, I was surrounded by two great guys, Harry and Adam, who were also very involved in the world of metal. And I came from a classical guitar background, but heavy influence in progressive rock. And of course, then later on, by proxy, progressive metal, and then metal as a genre entirely. Actually, Harry is the one who's responsible for really getting me up to date with a landmark album called Skeptic's Universe by Spiral Architect. And that blew my mind. I don't remember the year it was. I think it was 2005 or 2006. We're coasting in Harry's car. He's giving me a ride because I was a broke teacher, Vanier College, which has always served me right, by the way. No dissing Vanier College. It's just, as a musician,
It's hard.
we're broke, man.
Yeah.
So I was rich in other ways, broke financially. Harry's giving me a ride. He goes, dude, what do you think of this? And I'm listening to this and I go, what the heck is going on here? And he says, okay, I can turn it off if you want. And I just, no, I need more. And so this really opened up my ears and mind to what was going on in metal since 1999.
There's
I'd
been a
kind of
lot.
tuned off a little bit because of the grunge movement, and stuff, and just life. My firstborn son, Benjamin, was born in 1999. And, you're busy. So this put me right into it. Because Adam and Harry were very, very involved in my environment at the time, Harry was working for me alongside me, and then eventually Adam was as well. We were talking metal all the time. And it wasn't much of a leap to start making connections. I think all of us understand this as guitarists to make that leap from classical guitar virtuosity and excellence. Some might even use the word elitism, but in a positive way. Pushing oneself for creativity, for expression. And that led me to this idea of actually, the first one was critical density, where I encouraged Harry to write a piece for guitar and string quartet that has become one of his flagship pieces. Let's face it, won an award for this, Canada Council Award. And this was, ourselves talking and riffing on how can we push the guitar into more textures that we find, more rhythmic structures that we find in metal. I was also playing at that time with amplification. I decided to do some research in 2007, 2008 to really get a solid system on stage. Harry helped me out with this. After this critical density thing, we started talking about, well, we then did impressions. After impressions was done, noVae came about because of all this talk that we've had over literally the years. So noVae is this exploration of metal textures and ideas and motives that are found in classical guitar music, whether it be subconscious or consciously done.
Awesome, cool. And
Notably in contemporary music, I would add there.
Yeah,
yeah, for
of
sure.
course. Yeah.
And I think Adam put a link here. Adam Chickality, I think, put the link to Critical Density. So thanks for doing that, Adam, in the chat. People want to hear it.
Thanks, Adam.
And also to everyone in the chat, please, if you have questions for Harry, Adam, or Patrick, please put them in the chat. We'd love to hear them.
Yeah, the Q&A can keep going on.
Yeah,
as we're
awesome. Did
talking
did
here.
Harry ever get you doing any like Tosin Abasi style thumping on the, or is that kind of your thumb tremolo technique, right? It's sort of, I noticed a little bit of a similarity there, like this two-way thumb thing.
Yeah, well, the tremolo thumb technique for me, and now that you've stepped right into it and opened up that door, was me just trying to be more orchestral.
Okay.
I've always seen the classical guitar, as many classical guitars have in the past, as a mini little orchestra and a tremendous amount of textures that are often, in my opinion, not overdone. They're not overdone. And so I tend to be a little bit of an extremist in that regards. I like to go full throttle
Yeah.
with a lot of ideas and with a lot of the way that I like to express myself artistically. So I said, why can't we keep a bass just riding the whole way through while training the fingers to be able to do something else in the treble? The first serious piece I wrote with that technique was a piece called Train to Koyumbaba. And in this piece, you see this imitating the chug of a train, right? Chugga, chugga, chugga. And that chug is ever present in metal all the time.
Yep.
I mean, Degent was named Degent because of that chug.
Yeah, it's very onomatopoeic, right? Is the word?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, automatopoeia.
Yeah.
It's funny you went right to Tosin because, Pat, when I first saw you do that back in 19 Dickety whatever.
Yeah.
Probably 2005
19
or something.
Dickety 2.
19 Dickety 2 because the Kaiser stole our word 20. Yeah, I remember the first thought I had was Victor Wooten.
Yeah, but Tosin got it from Victor Wooten, right? I think.
Right, then that must be like the lineage of it, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I think he talks about how he saw Victor Wooten doing that, and then he basically combined it with classical tremolo. I think it's like the perfect fusion technique because it's like Victor Wooten style thumb technique with classical tremolo on an 8-string electric guitar in metal. I'm like, you can't get more fusion than that,
Yeah.
as far as
I agree.
like a crazy technique goes. Cool. Nice. Well, I mean, this is super cool. I'm wondering, Harry, you wrote a piece on the album, right?
Yeah, my piece Hyperion, which is, I think, right now my only solo classical guitar piece, which I wrote initially for Tariq Harb, who I think is with us on Facebook Live here.
Oh, cool.
Hey, Tariq.
And who premiered the piece, but Pat's been playing it around the world for the past few years. And, Pat's been such an integral part of my DNA, musical DNA from my initial classical studies in 2005 till now, really, that a lot of his musical characteristics and tendencies ended up in that piece, largely because they shaped my way of thinking about the classical guitar, especially coming from the electric guitar world, from metal guitar. Pat was by far the biggest influence that I had in classical guitar and has remained that way. So yeah, it's quite an honor to have Hyperion finally recorded on this most metal of classical guitar albums.
I remember you saying, because I interviewed Harry before, but it isn't public because it was for my research, although I am going to edit that interview eventually because I have a series of interviews with different composers and guitarists coming out. But I remember you saying in that interview, Harry, that you kind of went to a concert that Patrick gave and it was sort of an inspiring moment for you and inspired you to pick up the classical guitar, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was in 2005, just before. That was at the tail end of my initial run my main run as a metal musician, and a friend who had been studying at Vanier College in Montreal in classical voice invited me to a faculty concert, and it just so happened that Pat was playing there, Patrick Roux's Bourdon de l'âme, and I was all the way in the back of the recital hall and was actually absolutely blown away. I'd never seen anything like that. Now it seems totally normal to me because Pat, but I was just shocked at how powerful, massive, orchestral, like arranged that piece was, and the way Pat performed it. and it's totally subverted my understanding of what classical music and certainly classical guitar could be. And it was, I think, as I remember it anyway, this was 15 years ago, but as I remember it, that was kind of a light bulb moment when I thought, yeah, I need to go work with this guy and see what happens, whether it informs my metal composition and playing or other. And turns out it was more on the other side of things.
Cool. Awesome. Nice. Well, I know this is slightly out of order, but since we got on the topic of Hyperion and the technique, do you want me to play the clip, Pat, of the?
I'd love for you to show that. That's one of the videos that's part of my luthier series, and there's a close up of the thumb, the tremolo thumb technique, but done in a slow fashion.
Yeah.
Right. Where here it's not so much a tremolo as it is used for ease, and also used so that you can get an alternating attack sound. One of the things that's always bugged me about classical guitar is we hear up picks or down picks all the time. So if you're using your thumb, it's just down pick, right? This would be another sound. And so same goes with the fingers, which incidentally, I also explored this. That's, you can hear that on Impressions. But anyway, yeah, sure. Let's hear the clip.
Let's hear the clip.
Nevermore.
Okay. I'm just going to turn my mic off here. Wonderful. Very cool. Great writing.
Thanks.
Great writing, Harry, and great playing, Patrick.
Yeah.
Cheers, mate.
Nice.
Cheers.
Frank Scott says cool technique. Definitely.
Is that Koonce?
No, Frank Scott.
Oh, Scott.
Not
I thought it was Frank Kuntz.
No, it's Frank Scott. But Frank tunes into the show quite often. So it's nice to see you, Frank.
Yes.
And Adam Chickaliti says, and for me, my view of classical guitar changed when I heard Tariq play Critical Density. So indirectly related to that moment when Harry heard Kearney play Bourdon. Yeah. Super cool.
That's awesome to hear, Adam.
Nice. So you were telling me, Patrick, that you kind of you already described a little bit how you had to find people to work with that shared the same ideas, which is how you found both Adam and Harry. So do you want to describe sort of how that came about?
Right. Well, here I am exploring extended techniques, extended rasguiatos, different ideas, different rhythmic structures, different textural different textural sounds that often are avoided actually because they're ugly. They're considered ugly, but done right, it's done right. So here I am exploring the idea of pushing the classical guitar into these textures of metal. And how do I go about this? And I finally started getting a program together. In 2009, wrote a piece called Sagittarius A Star, which is 100% metal influenced. All I did for a whole year there was listen to just metal, all forms of metal, whether it be Meshuggah or Animals as Leaders or Spiral Architect or even in the more progressive direction, Dream Theater, Jeff Loomis. Sorry?
Between the Buried and Me?
Yeah. Between the Buried and Me. Great fucking. Oh, nice.
If I may throw in, there's a notable influence in Sagittarius A Star that you haven't mentioned there, Pat. Nevermore.
Yes, I was just getting to it. About to say Jeff Loomis and Nevermore, which unfortunately is Nevermore. But yes, Jeff Loomis was definitely influenced because of the diminished, his use of the diminished arpeggios, diminished runs, the way he layers it also. And it doesn't make the guitar sound like a guitar as much anymore, yet it's still very guitaristic. Incredibly difficult to do in the high register on classical guitar, but I managed to pull it off in this piece with a crap load of practicing. And you hear it in Sagittarius A Star. in a particular clip that maybe we can get
Yeah,
to
we'll
eventually.
play that right away here. Sorry, there's a bunch of questions. Why don't we listen to the clip and then I'll get to these questions? How does that sound?
Cool.
Since
cool.
you're talking about it. So it's from, I'm just going to pull up the timestamp.
Yeah,
here.
this is that diminished run that eventually finds its way beyond the 12th fret. And it's done at such a speed that even when I was listening to it the other day again in the car, I'm going, what the hell's this guy on? Cocaine?
Yeah.
It's insane. And the fact that I can actually do it on classical guitar still stuns me.
Yeah.
It still stuns me today. So let's listen to it.
Okay.
Right?
I've queued it up here. We'll listen to this clip.
There
Sorry.
you go.
There.
And then that segues into another crazy, crazy part where you have multiple textures going on. You have the bass that literally has its own voice and its own articulations, a la almost Glenn Gould-ish.
Yeah.
And then you have on the top these crazy trills that are made to imitate kind of the cymbal work that you'll hear actually all over a lot of really good metal drummers. Some of the cymbal work, again, I hate coming back to Spiral Architect all the time, but some of the cymbal work that you hear on A Skeptic's Universe,
Asgeir
just
Mikkelsen.
really crispy. It's just crispy. So I wanted to try to find those textures. And how do you do this and keep the drive going?
Yeah.
And it not sound like grandpa's music on classical guitar? How do you do this, right? So it took me a year to write this piece. Once I did, I then took me a whole other year to learn how to bloody play the piece. I couldn't play the piece for a whole year.
Yeah.
And anyway, I was shocked last year when Félix Dallaire played it at the Guitar Montréal competition.
Nice.
Shocked that someone's actually going through this torture and doing a pretty decent job at it too. But yeah, anyway, getting back to it, I'm happy with the way it came out. And the recording, oh my God, it came out so well.
Yeah.
On that note, maybe we should talk also about the miking scheme.
Yeah, for sure.
Of the guitars, guys.
Oh, we can't.
Remember
give
how
that
much
away.
trouble we went through?
We cannot talk about
Adam's secrets.
All right,
they're just
fine.
gonna be.
No, that's totally fine. There's nothing secret to it. But
Anyway, 3 different guitars were used on this album, and we
Yeah.
mic'd every guitar to capture that guitar's essence, and also to go in this direction of a sound that is not a, excuse my expression, grandpa's typical classical guitar sound that puts people to sleep. It's a lush sound. It's a beautiful sound. Don't get me wrong. I love it. But not for this project, right? And so we did, and I say we, I don't really include myself here. This was the work of Adam and Harry.
Yeah, how was it for you guys trying to go with this ethos into the record with like the technical side of it?
Well, first of all, I love the Metalocalypse references Pat kept dropping the Grandpa's Guitars things. Don't know that episode, check it out. Yeah, you know, Pat and I had been working together for many years by the time we began noVae in 2015 in earnest. But, you know, I had produced Pat's last record, Impressions, and before that, I was engineering in a studio, La Flame Studios, where we did this recording. And
we also worked on Tariq stuff.
Yeah, we worked on with many other wonderful guitarists, Tariq Harab and many others. And in that time, and previous recordings by Pat, one-off recordings, including that Bourdon de Lame recording that you did for the Patrick Roux portrait album.
I forgot.
And I had come from an audio engineering background, but my focus was very much in studio production and focus on pop and metal side of things. But I was a classical musician and classical composer by that point. So I was interested in exploring, well, to use Pat's and Metalocalypse's term, to finding a less grandpa's guitar sound. What I envisioned for Pat from early on, from that initial experience that I talked to you about hearing him for the first time in concert, was a sound like my head was inside a grand piano, 9-foot grand piano, just like this massive, enveloping, wide stereo image, kind of modern sound. Another way I used to think about it was kind of a, what if Dream Theater's 6 Degrees of Inner Turbulence were translated into guitar sound. So early on with Pat, we experimented with miking approaches and miking techniques that we refined over the years. I think we captured a more kind of warm, round, sensitive version for impressions, the Ponce CD, which was, of course, appropriate to that material. And then working with, Adam and I have known each other literally as long as Pat and I have known each other. We met in 2005 at Vanier and have collaborated on practically every musical project since then in some form or another. At the very least, critiqued each other on them.
Yeah, well, nothing has passed, like it goes, if Harry's work has passed through me and my work has passed through him, like there's always
Yeah. And sorry, Adam, what's your sort of background in terms of what you've studied in music? And
well, I mean, we all met at Vanier actually, and I started life as an electric guitar player, and I've just it's hard to describe what I do. I call myself a producer, which meant something at one point, but doesn't mean something anymore. So what I do is I end up kind of batting cleanup on a lot of these kinds of projects, right? I ended up coming here to New York. Harry and I both in New York now, and studying here and getting more into composition and production as well. And now I'm actually I lecture at SUNY Purchase. I'm also co-head of graduate studies in music and technology there. Cool. And then in like my private sector, I've done everything from I've engineered for Naxos, PBS, NPR. I did something for Old Flame, which was like more of like an indie rock record. I do some country music. Spent some time on Broadway doing synth programming with the immortal Randy Cohen, doing work on most one of my last pieces of work there was Jagged Little Pill, just in time for Canada Day. So
nice.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, right? And that's where I kind of like ended up in this like weird generalist role, right? And that's kind of, I guess, what I bring to the team is that like, I exist in the classical sphere and the new music world as well, but I also do all this other like kind of
it's probably helpful that you're like a little versatile in that way too, because this album is kind of a bit of a fusion thing, right? So
well, yeah, I mean, all three of us are, so
yeah, but it's important to have that kind of flexibility. Just use your ears, like no matter what music you're working with, you're using your ears. And that's, I don't know, I think about that a lot with teaching, because I don't sort of restrict my teaching studio to just classical students, at least not right now. And I have a lot of students who are doing, like, I have a student playing Fear Factory, I have students playing Pink Floyd, like whatever, and so in those cases it's like I'm not necessarily approaching it even differently. I try to think of my role as the same in every situation. I'm listening to articulation, listening to sound, listening to melody, listening to harmony, and bring all that to the student, right? But it's the same with recording. I would imagine that you're trying to use your ear in a general role to get what you're going after, regardless of the genre.
Well, I mean, yeah, and I don't want to cut Harry off because I think you were mid-thought there. But while we're on the subject, it is interesting. There's a bridge between effective engineering and musical philosophy, right? Like I actually used Pat's album. I used a snippet of it before it was released in a lecture this semester in a class on production as like aesthetic production, right? Mm-hmm. And I was talking, I played like another recording of Koyan Baba, and then I played our recording of Koyan Baba, and I said like, the difference in our interpretation is like Pat has told us, the story of Koyan Baba as a piece. I mean, both we've heard, you know what I mean? And that's one of the great things about Pat, right? Is he's like a folk musician is when he performs live, he tells you the story behind the piece, and it really, really captures audiences. No, it really does. I know you're
a storyteller.
But it's good, man. Like when you came and played in my little like farm town where I grew up, like people like
the Irish in
still
me
talk about that, So that's what they like, and so Harry and I had of course heard that. So it's on our minds, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you think about Koyan Baba, and you think about this like what is, I guess, this transcendental experience for a composer. Right. Mm-hmm. To experience something new and to have a complete, like such a shift, almost a schism in compositional style at that point in their career. Right. And now all of a sudden I'm going to put him in a church and record him from the back of the room. Like that doesn't, I want to think more about like the way that Pat brings out the folk elements of that piece to begin with, how it sounds like Turkish music or somebody's interpretation of Turkish music at the very least.
A classical guitarist's view
right.
and fingers.
Yeah. So
You
in
know.
that case, then all of a sudden you take that information, right? You take that philosophy and you take that soul and you take the way that Pat, like some of my favorite performances of Pat's, you know, obviously I had a similar experience with Harry because we started at Vanier around the same time, or started music at Vanier around the same time, and we both saw Pat play, and it was transformative. But for, you know, some of the stuff I really like about Pat is like when I'm sitting next to him in a room, you know, we're hanging out, and like you get this intimate wooden experience with Pat, and you hear Koyan Baba and you hear the creaks and you hear the passion like up close, and that break, it's like that says something to people. So how do you translate that into an engineering sense? You don't mic them from across the street. You bring the mics closer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
and you know, and I think really it's an extension.
That's a very scary experience for a lot of classical guitarists.
Yeah.
Every classical guitarist I've ever worked with is, can you put the mics a little further back?
Yeah. Don't
You
show my
know,
nail noise. Yeah.
Yeah, well, great, I will, but you're going to sound like you're playing further back. Why don't you go clean up your playing, right? So there's a lot of technical work that goes behind that, where you have to study the pants you're wearing. You have to study the
Wardrobe is a
gear,
consideration. The chair creaking.
the chair,
Oh yeah, chair
the
creak, chair
the
creaking.
floor.
Because
the-
we're up in his face with the mics. I
Yeah.
mean, we're as close as we can get.
Well, and you don't
really.
strike me as a very still player, Pat.
But I have to do this in studio.
Right.
It's funny when you see me, and these guys got an earful and an eyeful when we did noVae, because we videotaped the whole thing just for our own archives, in case also the mics moved. We would have an archive. We'd be able to rewind.
Yeah.
There's me being an old man again with those words. Rewind the video, right, and see if the mics have moved. Because yes, I am not a still player. I'm very involved. I had to learn this.
Right.
I had to learn to, with my body, shut the F up.
Yeah. Oh, Frank Scott
Yes.
says, sounds like I have to get noVae, and breathing. Breathing is also a
Breathing
thing.
is a big concern.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Including in the editing, incidentally.
Yes. Yes.
That's-
I was just about to say this.
It's
And I have to give a chapeau to Adam and Harry, who literally did all the editing without me there at all.
Did you cut out
And
a
we're
lot of
able
breaths,
to
Adam?
find those places to make it breathe,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of William Shatner that comes out in my playing, right? And these guys just know how to edit that shit out, so I don't sound like a crazy guy.
Well, it's interesting. At the risk of parting the curtains of the recording process too much, there are multiple takes in any given finished recording. Of course,
yeah.
We're not editing out the breaths for the most part, but it is important that when Pat finishes a line and he exhales and then has a sharp intake of breath before beginning the next line, that still has to sound human and cohesive,
Right.
if we are edit around that line. So he's not breathing exactly the same with every take, especially considering how emotive and how passionate his performances are, even in the somewhat restricted performance environment of the studio with the highly sensitive mic distances positions. So that was a tricky thing, and there were some fun exchanges with Adam of like, hey, is this breath convincing at 017?
Yeah.
Which
Does
one's
this
it
sound
gonna
like
be?
totally out of context breath?
Did you notice that we don't have him exhaling on that one?
Yeah.
I remember you guys telling me that several times. I'd hear the talkback mics come on and go, Pat, can you breathe normal?
Can you breathe normal as opposed to breathing weird?
Okay, now we're going to take another 25 takes of this small section. Can you just not breathe here? We went through this. And it was fun, but you have to learn.
lot of
It's
work,
another
yeah.
set of skills.
I do want to add one note, because we're talking about the positioning and Pat's movements and the extraneous noises. Something that I found fairly shocking to discover when I first started recording classical guitar, especially a lot with Pat, was how sensitive that instrument is, or at least my miking approach is, to slight variations in positioning angles, axes and such. So even a few degrees of change in axis, or a few centimeters distance and change of position, like results in a substantially different sound,
It does.
at least in the kind of microscopic listening situation that we are in the studio. And anybody who's seen Pat perform live or any of his videos knows he's he's a storyteller, as we were saying. So very emotive, a lot of motion. He really physically encapsulates the story that he's telling. It's interesting that in the studio, even though he's super meticulous about restraining himself and controlling himself, he channels that same energy in a different way. I find, Pat, your playing is in an interesting way, a little bit different in studio, just as passionate, but somehow more focused.
Yeah.
And I think the restrictions on physical motion are part of that.
Well, and also not having an audience there, right? I mean, like playing for an audience changes everything, I find.
For sure, absolutely.
Although he's playing for us.
That's true.
We don't
guys aren't
count.
real.
Like at
you're
this
not
point,
real people. I mean,
yeah, no.
That's right. At one point, I have to forget that these guys are actually human beings.
Yeah.
And just do my job. But I completely agree with Harry, and I would say that extends to everybody. Everybody I've ever worked with sounds different in studio than they do live, than they do just teaching a lesson. That's part of being human.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, Michael.
go ahead.
Michael Lakehoff has a thing. Michael Lakehoff says, "I'm gonna edit out the very naughty words here," but he says, "Pat, when was the first time your bloody fingers hit the guitar strings, and at what age? Sorry about using bloody innuendos, Michael. LOL. You can use whatever language you want on my stream. It's okay."
Michael Lakehoff knows the answer to this question. We started playing guitar together in Lachine with Daniel Boyer.
Ah, cool.
But it wasn't with Daniel Boyer that I started. I started in a small little rural school playing chords. I learned a ton of Beatles tunes. I was 8 years old.
Nice.
I'm 49 years old this year. And so it's been a while. So I don't know if that answers your question, Michael.
I think so. He says,
but a long time ago, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth.
Roamed the earth in the 20th century. Michael Lakehoff also says, on the serious note, will this live YouTube cast be online to be viewed at a later time? Yes, it will stay on the YouTube channel and Facebook. So if you got to take off, don't worry, but just come back and finish it. And also Ben Diamond has a question, which I guess you kind of already addressed, Adam, a little bit in your discussion of Koi and Baba.
We can answer it again.
It says, what do you find most, roundtable question, so I guess for all of us, what do you find most influential in your composition / interpretations of new music for guitar?
Oh, that's a multifaceted question.
Yeah.
Say it again.
Okay. He says, what do you find most influential in your composition / interpretations of new music for guitar? So I guess either or. I guess in your case, you've done both, Patrick. So.
Yeah, well, is he talking about the fact that I write a piece and then I have to play a piece, and then how do I interpret that?
Maybe. That's an interesting question.
That's a very good question. But again, it's a multifaceted question. When I'm writing, I never write without a purpose. I always have. I was brought up by two parents who love movies, and so this cover, by the way, is a dedication of sorts to my parents who brought me up on movies. And I see my compositional style very much that way. Is I start with a script, if you wish. I know my beginning, my middle, and my end. And then I have to find material that's going to create those characters.
Right.
Then I write it down. Then I have to learn to play it. And then as I'm learning to play it, the interpretive decisions change. They constantly change, which is why I'm against writing one of my own pieces and recording it right away. It doesn't work for me. It might work for Roland Dienz, or it might work for Sergio Assad or others, because they've already worked that stuff out. I'm too slow. It takes me too much time to figure out really, really what I want to say with these fingers that this thing is telling me that I want to create. And I want to communicate, right? So the Sagittarius A star, this tribute to metal on classical guitar, was really, really difficult because it was all here. And it was all here. I had it in my ears. I had it in my head. How do you make it happen with these on this tiny little instrument? Yeah. Let's face it, it's probably one of the quietest instruments in the musical world.
I feel you there. I mean, I actually, you should really check this piece out.
So Ben, who's the guy who
Ben Diamond. Do you know Ben Diamond?
Yeah, Ben Diamond. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
If you're talking about maybe my work with other composers and my work with other interpreters? I can answer that too. That seems like another question.
No, I
But
think
I've worked
that's
with a ton of other composers in the past.
I think that's what he's looking for. He's going to be on later this month actually because he has a CD recording coming up with a bunch of Canadian music. So he said that your CD will be an
Cool.
inspiration to his. So there you go.
Excellent.
And
Glad to hear it. Yay,
just
Canada.
really quickly on that question from my perspective, like I think actually Patrick, you should check out this. Have you heard the Fifth Brouwer Sonata?
Yeah.
It has some really cool elements too that are, you know, extended techniques like Bartok pizzicatos and things. And
I know
think,
it's one of the at the risk of getting kicked in the head by other guitarists here is, you know, I find that finally Brower's getting away from the pentatonic da 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 dum.
Yeah,
you know, he's finally kind of moving away from that motive. Thanks.
Well, and what I appreciate about that sonata is that you know, as I played it in my first year of the Masters here, I found out about the Debussy quote in the second movement. I got more in tune with the sort of Afro-Cuban elements in the third movement, which are kind of reminiscent of some of his earlier works that borrow from that tradition.
That I didn't know.
And then, okay, it has a lot of similar themes to the Rito de las Orishas. I don't know if you know that
Oh,
piece.
really?
Yeah, it has some similar harmonies and rhythms and stuff. And then in the first movement, obviously the Bartok Stravinsky influence is just like clearly there. And so it's sort of, for me, it's probably similar to you, this album, as you live with the pieces and you get used to understanding the traditions that these things come from and sort of not understanding them fully, but just like sitting with that idiomatic, you know, way of using the guitar, it's sort of,
you can learn to adapt them better.
Yeah, exactly. And then also, like, I feel you with trying to make the guitar do something that it's not necessarily naturally good at. That Nathan wrote me a new sonata that's all based on Shostakovich. So the last movement is actually a very sort of metal scherzo also, which I think you would like. But it's just when you're trying to make the guitar sound louder than life and kind of go beyond the limits, you know, that's a challenge. I mean, it's a challenge worth doing, but it's hard.
And we're still discovering how the classical guitar not should sound, but its possibilities. And then you have to live with those choices. I really highly recommend a small book by Raphaël Andia called Les libertés et déterminisme de la musique sur la guitare, or something to that effect.
Okay.
It's on Harman Editions, I think, in France. He basically breaks the guitar playing style into two different styles. One is the noble style of playing, which focuses on the traditions of polyphony and forcing the guitar to do what it's not built to do. And then the other traditions that we find out in the 20th century, where we can finally break some of those rules and make the guitar sound what it can do very well, right? These idiomatic parallel chord movement and strumming. You know, just a lot of people just want to hear the guitar get strummed every once in a while, and not just this polyphonic work, which is beautiful. Don't get me wrong, but the more variety you add to the instrument that way, the more understanding you come to what the guitar is supposed to do. Not just Bach and not just Brouwer, right? There's everything in between. So yeah, absolutely.
Well, and also
I kind of rambled there.
No, it's okay. As an instrument too, when you change techniques, your right hand changes. And because of the direct control over sound that the right hand has, when you have to do different kinds of techniques, especially with strumming and stuff, or with any kind of like other extended techniques like pizzicatos, stuff like that, and playing with the flesh, I know you did some experimenting with that on the album. All those things, when you're forced to change your technique a little bit because of the type of texture you're going for, the sound is completely changed. And I imagine for you, Harry and Adam, that played a big role in producing this album, right? Like how you did the recording and how you did the editing, like how much was that forefront for you guys?
Yeah, well, like kind of a key aspect to what helped me lock into Pat's playing in the first place and his musical interpretation is how orchestral of a player he is. And again, since this was my main intro into classical guitar, I kind of took it as a given that that's just how things were. And later realized that wasn't necessarily the case as much in the field. His variation in tone color, in whether it's in hand positioning or angle or nail versus flesh ratio and so on, is extremely dramatic, like really wide contrast in sound colors, and very musically motivated. Like I've very rarely seen a situation in Pat's shaping of the pieces that he builds up where he makes a technical decision, a positioning decision or a color decision based on a technical limitation or challenge.
Mm.
It's always for musical reasons. And as an orchestral composer, as a chamber composer, and so on, that's really important to me musically, to capture the essence of his musical decisions and his beautiful orchestration on the instrument. On a technical side, I know at least one person here, Adam Ciccoliti, was really interested in the miking scheme. Kind of at the core of it, one of the things that, to relate back to what I was saying earlier, that was important to us in producing Pat's sound, including on Impressions and noVae, was close miking in such a way that we had somewhat separate control, tonal control over the bass side and the treble side. They are rather different strings in material and construction and tension and tone on a classical guitar. So it made sense to me, like, to think about it as a grand piano, which has patches or ranges of strings that are more similar sounding than others. And therefore to mic it in such a way that we had some kind of independent control of those frequencies, so that we could play into his orchestrational approach more loosely or more freely or more agilely, rather than the single close mic and then a couple of distant mic. Adam can talk about this some more too from his perspective.
Yeah, well, whenever you're multi-miking something, right? I mean, the best approach, if anyone wants to try it themselves, is to like Harry was saying before, right? Taking a mic, get a friend, right, and take a single microphone and just move it by centimeters, right, to different positions over your guitar, and you'll hear a world of color change very, very quickly. So the question then, when you're multi-miking something, is, well, what is each mic's purpose, right? And then how does that contribute to the overall, what I call meta timbre, right? Which you can go ahead and, there's got to be like a better word for that, but whatever, meta timbre.
I like that word.
That
Makes
ends up
sense,
being the
yeah.
sound wave.
I think that word's great.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, the thing is, it's funny, is I think of meta timbre in two ways. Is I think of it like orchestrally, like if you think about like an orchestral tutti, right, or whatever. It doesn't even have to be, choose your instrumentation. The difference between one instrument playing a line and then two instruments playing an identical line is like a synthesizer, right? You're adding different kind of shapes and sounds and stuff like that, right? So too is the effect when you put multiple mics on an instrument source, right? So when you put multiple mics at different distances on an electric guitar amplifier, you get a world of difference, right? And it's the same thing on the classical guitar. So we had to like choose in the moment what each mic's purpose is going to be and how it's going to reflect something that will eventually make a 360-degree pat, right? Because we want that orchestral pat. We want that to sort of envelop us and be close to us.
Where
but
it
it has to
surrounds you. Right?
Yeah, right. And then you really get that, like, that lush, like, Debussy charm, that but without it being, and I don't mean to like downplay other recording techniques, right? Like, I mean, we were talking before about breathing and noise. It's like, yeah, well, would you undo Glenn Gould recordings? There's tons of breathing and crap on that, right? And I worked with Jonathan Biss, and that dude like groans through every performance, but he's a master of the piano, right? And so, it's just something you take for granted. So, but whatever, we're taking the mics, we're bringing them closer to the instrument, and then each of them serves its own individual purpose. So in the case of miking Pat, we had two TLM 103s that we were using as our close mics, and then we had KM 184s, right? Am I right? Yeah, as our distant mics. And
we had set up other mics that we probably ended up not using, right?
Yeah.
I think we had up to a total of 6, maybe 8 mics.
We had a couple of Audio Technicas up, and then we ended up just like tearing the whole thing
and we
down.
dropped them. I think we dropped them in the end.
Well, we did a sound check because, like, Pat, such a great creative decision, used 3 guitars on the record, right? But that meant like a new sound check for each instrument, right? But each of them were like different. Like the Janity's like butter, right? And then the Marty is like Harry was talking about, that pianistic sound. So, but then each of those,
like a grand piano.
It might be worth noting here, when we say sound check, it's, we were pulling 12-hour studio days every day for a week, and sound check for each guitar was a half day. It was a good 6 hours.
Well, the quickest one was the Jean Rompré, and it took us 4 hours.
Yeah, right.
That was the quickest one. Just repeating the same musical segments for 4 hours, no recording here, moving mics.
Yeah,
that's it. So the Jadderny took us 8 hours, I think. The Marty, because we had worked with it before, took us something like 6 hours, something like that. If I remember correctly, don't quote me on that, but it was something to that effect.
I stopped counting hours at a
Yeah.
certain point.
Yeah.
No, I have those hours logged. I have.
Good.
I was keeping meticulous notes in the studio.
Do you guys-
Worth noting, we also have a lot of video footage and
Yeah.
photos of the disaster that, like, everything's taped off in triangles and the measurements. You know, we had to go back in for re-recordings for a couple of spots.
Yeah.
But
Boy,
this is why you
months later.
It was
And
months.
that's why
This
you
is
have
why
to
you
be-
do the recording, the measurements.
Yeah,
because
yeah.
You are
That's
able
right.
to go in.
You took
and-
measements and pictures.
Yeah.
Like
Smart.
the close-up
Every
pictures.
possible angle. A year later, we had to go into just to do a couple of spots the way you do reshoots on a movie kind of thing.
Mhm.
I think at least in one case, it was a breathing thing that just wouldn't line up and we didn't have
Yep.
yeah, we had to like pull together from these, you know, gigabytes worth of footage of photos and videos and measurements, and
It was
wraps
insane.
of
I
notes.
remember that day.
Straight up like hand drawn, like Adam hand drawn
Yep.
poorly, like
Yep,
with like,
yep.
as, like you know. Yeah.
Have you guys heard
blue
that
lined
album by Mark Teichels that has 18 different like vintage classical guitars on it?
Oh no,
I've heard of that album.
Oh, you should listen to it.
I
It's-
haven't listened to it yet.
It's amazing.
no.
It has the Usher waltz actually too, but it's this
Very
like
cool.
it's this album of 18 different guitars on with 18 different waltzes. But I can't imagine recording that. Like, Jesus Christ.
I mean,
That's insane.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, I don't know what they did, but the
Yeah.
way I would attack it is keep it easy, right?
Yeah.
Keep it simple,
Yeah.
which is just do the typical kind of church recording,
Yeah.
like Naxos does it, right? 2 mics, that's it.
Yeah.
Just put the player in the position that you know is going to sound good,
Yeah.
and that's the kind of sound you're going to get.
Yeah, I guess you can't get too in detail when every track is a different guitar like that, and there's 18 of them.
Right.
Also, David Steinhardt is asking, was there much processing or just faders at Unity?
oh, there was processing. We Harry and I. This is where it started to get like to blur the lines to where we ended up just kind of becoming co-producers, right? We started this in a very traditional way where it's like artist, producer, engineer, the triumvirate, and then you like make a classical record, right? Like that's kind of the way it usually works. And then we started getting into this like blurred line territory where we're all making creative and production decisions, and we're like, well, I guess we all produce this thing.
I started moving mics around.
I mean,
and telling them what buttons to press.
it ends up, you know. So I mean, the signal path is fairly clean to begin with. It's clean. We tracked into a Vintech 473, which is sort of
awesome.
Great. It's a great.
It's the best mic preamp ever for classical guitar. If you're using anything else, well, whatever.
Well, whatever. Adam's saying, did you do a lot of EQ compression, verb limiting, etc.?
Yeah. So so on that subject, so it was pretty clean into what's funny enough is actually kind of a dirty preamp. Though it can be clean, it's an imitation Neve, really. It's supposed to be a 1073, but it's Vintech's take on it, right? So depending on how the knobs are finagled, right, you might get a little bit of harmonic saturation, but you won't notice the harmonic saturation unless you really goose it, right? So, and then when we came to the mixing process,
it definitely has a color to begin with, but we weren't goosing it much.
Exactly. It's not like we were running it like an Aerosmith record, right? Like we were doing, you know, we were very conservative with it, but still at the same time we knew when it came to mixing, really, Harry and I sat there and we're like, okay, this is a metal record, we got to make it's got to pop a little bit more, right?
Yeah.
So there was processing. We applied EQ. I mean, I'd have to unbake the mix in my mind. I don't know, Harry, how much you remember.
Definitely. Well, obviously there was some compression and multi-band compression, I'm pretty sure, but
definitely
very
multi-band.
judicious EQ. I know we did this in multiple locations too. Like we did in different studios and home studios and whatever to hear different mixes, different room responses, different times in our lives. I mean, how long did we spend on post-production on this, guys? It was a good
years.
2 years.
Years.
Yeah. But it wasn't straight through, right?
No,
it was
no.
like we would work and then there'd be a hiatus and then we'd work and then there was a hiatus.
Yeah.
So and so there were definitely like, I don't want to say like it's not like severe EQ, right? But the idea was we were trying to like push up the colors that Pat's trying to bring out, right?
Yeah.
So for example,
Pat, also remaining in this metal idea of creating a modern sound for classical guitar, and not to be, you know, I would never record the works of Bach or Sohr this way ever. It'd be stupid.
Yeah.
Right. But how do you do this for classical guitar? How do you make it sound metal?
And it is piece dependent, right? Not just guitar dependent, as we were talking about, piece
That's
dependent.
right.
Like, you know, the collection of pieces on this album Pat selected and we selected together based on how we felt they tied into this metal aesthetic that we're all into, as prog metal. But
And
some
there's a lot.
pieces are more explicitly that than others. Hyperion, my own piece, is obviously directly metal influenced. There's a literal Dream Theater quote in there. And so the guitar used on that, the Simon Marty from Australia, and the post-production approach that Adam and I took was particularly hard and cold.
Yeah, I mean,
metal oriented.
It's the same as when you play a piece. I mean, you choose the color that you use as a player based on the piece you're playing. You don't play Grand Overture by Giuliani the same way you play Brouwer Sonata 5. Like, it's just with the colors that you
your
use.
Your whole right hand's going to change.
Yeah,
right. There's an appropriate way to do things. That's well said, Michael.
Or not necessarily. It could be appropriate, or it can be what you think is appropriate. But the point is,
right.
And it's a synergy of all these complex elements coming together.
The
player, the instrument, the decisions, the production. Yeah.
But it would be weird not to think about that in the production. Like, it wouldn't make sense not to consider that.
Well,
on
depends,
that note,
right?
on that note, I'd like to also say something before I forget. First of all, it's a concept album. My idea was to tell a story using these pieces. I want to shout out a hint for those of you who actually have the recording. Even better if you have the physical recording someday, sometime. Is check out the years of the pieces. Check out when they were composed and where they're laid out on the CD. Pay attention to the order of the pieces. And pay also attention to the number 5 that I think is in your face, right from the title. Right.
This is Pat's 5th studio album. We pulled a Symphony X on.
Does it all equal out to 666 or something? Or?
No, that was Impressions.
Oh man,
I'm kidding.
If we could have made that happen.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I'm kidding,
man.
but look at the cover of Impressions.
Yeah. Larry Kearney says, "Hope the Scotch was good. One great show. Thanks, Larry."
Cool.
Also, David Steinhardt's telling me about that album I was talking about. Kai had to do a different setup for each guitar on that album, Mike. Okay, I had no idea. That is a lot of work.
That's like a science experiment at that point, right? Like,
yeah.
I would love to hear this.
Yeah, you should check it out. I think it's on GSI Guitar Salon International.
Cool.
Anyhow, also for people who want to hear the album, I did put a link in the description to the Spotify link. So, please give it a listen.
Please.
Spotify, YouTube, on Amazon.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Go buy the physical CD and look at the artwork.
Exactly. Buy the physical copy. Track Patrick down or order it or something. It's good.
Oh, you can get it on Amazon.
Oh, okay, there you go.
PlayStation.
Yeah. Awesome. Adam's asking another question about IQs. Do you dumping a bunch of the mids and lows of the IQ? I'm assuming you guys weren't missing too much with the highs.
Okay, so the high end of a classical guitar, like you lose overtones fairly quickly on an instrument like that, right? So
well, it doesn't have that many overtones to start with.
Yeah, exactly. So, but there is definitely for warmth, there's like character stuff. Like we used a little bit of saturation for character. We definitely EQ'd to, we do the surgical EQ to like remove offense. You know what I mean? Yeah. But then like as compared to like another classical record, like if you, it's interesting you brought that up, Michael, because some classical records, it is unity gain. I forget who said that, but some, when you're definitely some that I've worked on have been like pretty much like done at source, right? Especially orchestral records are a lot like that. And depending on the producer you're working under.
Right.
But, in this case, we actually wanted to exaggerate it a little bit. So yeah, we wanted to like give it some girth, if it were something that required girth, if it was something that, maybe we felt, needed to be a little bit less like, woolly, maybe we were pulling down a little bit of the low mids, right? And applying compression judiciously to either exaggerate attack or to help, like, when you play with the flesh, right? Or if you're playing on an electric guitar, or I guess you could do this on classical guitar as well. If you're palm muting, right? You actually change the overtone, the arrangement of the overtones, right? So all of a sudden now the best way to handle that, really, pro tip, is multi-band compression, right? So that basically whenever the fundamental gets a little too exaggerated, it gets just like gently pushed down a little bit, right? So things like that, obviously those are that are corrective perhaps in something that maybe we missed in the recording process. Obviously we're trying to get most of it at source, like most classical records, and then that way everything that we apply on top of it is like fun. You know what I mean? We're like, oh yeah, let's make this a metal record, let's make it like Harry said, hard and okay, this is going to be the sterile section.
Is it edgy? Is it exciting to listen to? Is it also at sometimes just really nervous?
Yeah.
Do you want to go pee all the time?
There's parts in Usher Waltz where you need to feel completely on edge.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then the space, right? I mean, we even look. I don't want to give away too much of the story, but we even went EDM on this and compressed some of the reverb.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And of course, we needed it to be loud because a big part of this is impact. So
Jeremy,
this went all the way into with Jeremy Toos, wonderful mastering engineer for
amazing. Only
whom
good
I've known
things
for
to
many
say.
years since McGill, and does incredible orchestral recordings and whatnot. He was, he's more of he's a high-end classical mastering engineer.
Man's brilliant. Like
he's brilliant.
Yeah.
But his approach is not necessarily as Hollywood as sometimes we would call it, as we wanted it to be. So we're like, yeah, how much more can you squeeze out of this without sacrificing the transients or whatever?
Right.
Push it up. It's fine. It's all good.
Lady Gaga. It's cool.
Nice.
Hans Zimmer.
Well, to wrap up the technical conversation, David Steinhardt has one last technical question from me. Sorry. Any other transformer-based color to press you like on classical guitar, or is the 1073 king?
I'm not as I'll let these guys answer that because I'm not as religious about this. I'm happy with
I talk a good talk about the Vintech, and because I love it, I bought it years ago. I have a 4-channel, but Avalon, I've gotten great results from this. I've gotten great results out of the old the strips. I'm looking for the name. Starts with an R. Harry, need your help here. Roger Reeves, I can't think of it right now. And I've also gotten some good results out of some mic preamps that are traditionally used for percussion work. We forget that the classical guitar has this snare drum kind of an effect. There is sound pressure levels especially when the mics are close, that it doesn't react like, let's say, a violin or a cello, right? And so a mic that can take this kind of like, right? A preamp that will handle that nice and smoothly is a benefit for classical guitar. Anyway, that's my 2 cents.
I mean, I guess on that subject, if that's something that you're really leaning into, anything from the Neve, like if you get a Portico,
Neves, that was the word I was looking for.
They
handle Neve strips.
But realistically, if you just try really hard, you can use a Mackie Onyx and you'll get a good result, right? What you really want at the beginning of the signal chain is something very clean. Right. And then if you're looking specifically, sorry, who was this? David was asking, right?
Yeah.
So David, if you're asking, if you want coloration, then it's like leaning into probably more the Neve territory and Vintech and things that kind of live in that world. Maybe, I've used APIs for classical recordings, to be honest with you.
Yes, we have.
Yeah.
We've done it in
whatever's available, try things out. If you have the liberty, the way we work together, the three of us, we spend a lot of time together. We're basically living in the studio together, so we have time to experiment and explore. I know with Pat, we've gone out and rented preamps in the past. I think for a Jeffrey McFadden and Andrew Zone dual speaker.
Yeah, and also for myself.
We've gotten some Avalon preamps and for yourself. Yeah.
So
Avalon's fairly.
Are you suggesting that maybe the craftsmanship is almost as important as the equipment?
I mean,
go ahead, Harry.
Obviously, but also, like, most importantly, again, I'm saying this as a hardcore classical guy. I'm making my living as a classical composer. There's still this lingering conservatism in the classical music world in general, certainly in the classical guitar world, about things relating to production.
Right.
Whether it's in a live environment, a kind of lifting of the nose about any kind of amplification of acoustic instruments, or the use of compression on recordings. Like, guy, compression is in everything, including the things you love. It's a subtle thing, and there are many, many gradations and layers and varieties and whatnot. And we just need to get over this and approach music being made now as music of the 21st century, which it is, even if it was written in the 19th century.
I mean, I'm not
go ahead, Michael.
I just feel like I'm not an expert on this, but I feel like you're never going to get from a recording what you get when you hear it in person. Like when you hear
that's for everything.
Yeah, that's for everything. So I don't understand why people are so upset about any kind of alteration after the fact of a recording, because it's already
you're listening
altered.
to a recording, an album, you're listening to an amplified sound.
Yeah, exactly. So it's and also and with the amplification thing, like I have to say, like my fiance is a singer and she's a dramatic voice, so incredibly large, colorful voice. And if I don't amplify myself, I have no dynamics. And
Yep.
what is the point of playing together if I have no
None.
dynamics? And what's the point if she can't use her full range? There's no. That's just I don't know. Yeah, this. I could go on a rant about this, but I won't.
You can exaggerate dynamics so much more in the studio and then compensate that for the volume difference.
Yeah.
Proof is in this album because
Beautiful thing. You can't do that as much live.
Proof is in this album because I remember playing a lot more crazy on those takes, and when I listened to the album again the other day, I realized, wow, I don't sound insane.
It's screen versus stage, right? It's like it's like doing Shakespeare in the Park versus making a movie. And Harry and I like making movies.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean. I mean, we wouldn't if Jessica and I recorded, we wouldn't be amplifying me, but in a live performance is necessary for the just coming across properly to the audience.
I always play with amplification right now. I don't know if Matthew McAllister is listening right now or Renee Izquierdo, but this one concert I gave in Scotland some years ago, Matthew was freaking out when he saw me come in with my system. He goes, "Pat, are you serious? Are you going to be using amplification?"
That was a terrible Matthew impression.
That's a terrible Scottish accent, Matthew. I apologize for that. But yes, even in the smallest venues, I bring in my gear. And why? Because I don't have to put it up that high. And I can give the audience that much more without pushing the crap out of the instrument live. We're all used to listening to music like this now. We're all listening to an amplified sound anyway, right? So making sure your gear is healthy, right? Have some healthy gear with you. Don't have some Radio Shack $50 mic. That's not going to work, right? And after the show, both Renee and Matthew were, well, Pat, yeah, we got to admit it was pretty damn good, right? It works. And it's in one of these, what does Matthew call it again? The smallest cathedral in the world or something. It's a beautiful venue to play in. And you would, a traditional classical guitarist would never play with amplification there, but I did. I hauled it all the way from Montreal.
Amazing.
And it was amazing. I got a lot of great comments from it. So anyway,
Agnes says I was there. Agnes is studying in the.
Oh, hi, Agnes. Hi.
And Adam.
I miss those guys.
Adam Chicletti says, yeah, they're great guys. I met a bunch of them in Carrion at Renee's festival in Spain. So, Adam Chicletti says, I got to go teach guys. I'll catch the rest. This was fascinating. Love you. Happy Canada
Peace,
Day.
Adam.
We love you too. And Danny Ramage says people who don't like amplification don't have a good amplification system. That's fair.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Haters want to hate, he says. Yeah.
Look, man, it's like, it's right. Pat, right? It's the Tao of Jeet Kune Do, right? You take what works and you discard what doesn't.
Yeah.
Right?
Bruce Lee's my guy.
Yeah.
Him and Glenn Gould.
It works. And if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work. That's,
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
Try a fractal audio, Axe effects.
I had an Axe effects for a while. I had one and then I sold it because I wasn't playing.
Next to me right now, it's the best thing that's happened this
I
time.
miss my Axe effects. Those were good days. But I wasn't using it enough, and I was like, I needed the money, and anyhow, sad. Kevin Manderville says, "Happy Canada Day, fellas." Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
Happy Canada Day from the U.S. Ugh.
Yeah. Thanks, Harry. Awesome. Well, we talked.
I'm the only one here who's actually in Canada.
Yeah,
right
it's
now.
true. Yeah, I'm in the.
Michael's in the Netherlands. These guys are in Manhattan. No, Bronx in Manhattan, right? And I'm in Montreal.
The BX.
Nice. Yes. Yeah. I miss Canada. I miss the mountains and the maple syrup and
and the igloos.
Name some more stereotypes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, now that I don't live there, I can, I've stopped saying sorry so much. I have to say though, like people when I first moved here, people were like, "What's wrong with this guy?"
I still say
miss a good
sorry a lot.
apology. I miss a good apology.
Yeah.
I once held the door for somebody at a Tim Hortons and said sorry for doing it.
Yeah.
The most Canadian thing I've ever done.
Yeah. I've done that as well.
When we apologized to that waitress when she handed us the check.
Yeah, what the hell was that? Remember? And we looked at each other and oh God.
The other thing I'm sure that Harry misses right now is a good Montreal style brunch.
Yeah.
I'm sure Harry misses this.
Yeah. I'm sure.
Something I learned when Harry came over last time. He goes, Pat, Montreal's got a unique brunch situation.
It really does, though.
Greatest breakfast scene in the world. It's
it is.
You know what I mean?
I've had some good breakfast there after Pat's festival, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Oh, Virginie says, I'm enjoying the conversation, but where's Bruce?
Bruce the cat made a very brief appearance earlier. She might have caught it, but
Okay.
yeah, he's being a little shy, probably because he already ate, so he doesn't need me right now.
Fair enough. Okay, well, just to get back on track, we were talking about the extended techniques. Do you want me to play the Koi and Baba clip also, Patrick?
Sure, but I noticed before that when you played the Hyperion, we heard it, but we didn't see it, right? With
The
people...
audience sees it, you don't.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
see.
yeah.
Cool.
Sorry, it's going through
Yeah,
OBS.
let's listen to that Koyumbaba bit, because I do a particular kind of rasgado here, which is not unorthodox. It's not my invention at all. But for those out there that are interested to see it, how I play that section, I'll demo it not on a guitar, but I'll demo it here on camera so they can get an idea of what's going on in terms of extended techniques that are seen on this and heard on this album. Yeah, sure. Let's play that.
And this is not actually Koi and Baba. This is your piece, Train to Koi and Baba, right?
Oh, Train to Koi. So we're back on tremolo thumb technique.
Yes. Well, that's what I have
yeah.
here for the clip that you sent. Yeah, yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So let's go back to the tremolo thumb technique, and now we get to see it in a sped up scenario.
Version. Yes. Awesome. Okay. Cool.
Gives you an idea of that texture and that effect. Daniel said something here on the Facebook feed.
Yes, that's right.
I remembered when he was in the audience for that concert. I also remember, Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know if you're still listening. Are you the one who jumped up out of your seat during the Usher Waltz when I got into the Pidsy Bartoks? I don't know if Daniel's still listening, but anyway, I did. When I got to the Pidsy Bartok, it wasn't in that concert. I think it was another concert. But anyway, I was playing the Usher Waltz, and I got to and there's two people in the front row that literally jumped up out of surprise, which is such an honor, such a compliment.
That's good.
Because that's exactly what you're looking for, right? I mean, that is the intended effect. Yeah, Daniel, thanks for the shout out.
He
really
says
appreciate
that sounds like something I would have done. And David Steinhardt's asking, do you use the tremolo thumb with Villa-Lobos 12?
Sorry, say that again.
Do you use the tremolo thumb with Villa-Lobos Etude 12?
Yes, actually I do. I've used it as a study for tremolo thumb for some of my students. And I also, you can use this alternating technique on your fingers in which Bach piece is it? I think it's the Gigle or the Double from one of the lute suites, where you've got alternating sixths, and it gives you such a better sound because it's not just all upstrokes. Getting back to this alternate idea is in Impressions, in the thème varié final, one of the variations has this dun, 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 and everybody does it like this. I don't. So I arpeggiate the first one. So you're literally getting double the speed without really moving the fingers faster than you are this way. And the sound is way better in terms of alternation. Yeah, the problem is you got to soften the nail attack. right? So, in just to expand a little bit on the tremolo technique, it took me years to get that going. And oddly enough, I was living right next to a train track in those years, and I just imitate So the first step for me was to be able to do this and this at the same time,
Right.
right?
Yeah, that's a bit hard.
So just try doing this. This is step one. Then step two, obviously, is we're already doing this, right? And then step three is this,
Like these
right?
kind of new techniques can take a long time. I'm playing a piece by Tilman Hofstock, which is variations on a theme by Debussy, and it has this like double trill thing where you do a slur trill in the left hand, and then you do cross string trills like tremolo fingering in the right hand on a higher strings.
Yep, right.
So you have,
Atanasoru Kusanov does the same kind of ideas as well.
Okay, yeah, but I'd never done it
Right.
before. So like Carla was like, "You should play this piece," because Tillman gave it to me. It's newly published. It's really nice.
Tilman Hofstock is such a fantastic guitarist.
Yeah,
and a
composer.
really good composer.
Yeah,
as
that
well.
piece is amazing. It's this exactly the same Debussy quotas in the Brauer Sonata. Anyways, but like it took me a few months just to like get that down, which was annoying because the rest of the piece didn't take so long for me to learn.
Yeah.
But then you have this one part where you're just like drilling every day, and you're still like it's like when you learn tremolo for the first time. I guess it just
It's a new technique, so
Yeah.
it takes time. Or you just don't learn it and move on. You don't have to play this material.
I had to
Right?
play this piece. I wanted to. I love the piece. I'm glad I put the time in. But yeah. Plus now I have access to that technique, so that can't be a bad thing.
So anyway, encourage everybody to start using their thumb as a tremolo.
Yeah. Nice. Very cool. Well, I think we've covered. Oh, yeah. One other thing you mentioned to me, Patrick, that you wanted to talk about was the fact that you had to find a record label that was going to be down with the vision you had for this record.
Well,
right?
yeah, here we are coming out with all these unorthodox ideas, right?
Yeah.
Not just the repertoire. I mean, part of the decision was also to find material that is part of the canonical works, so that
Right.
we're not completely we're not creating a product that is completely new, right? There has to be some kind of sales pitch to it as well, but I'm not going to sacrifice, let's just put these pieces on there because people like them. No, it has to fit the screenplay. It has to fit my movie, right? And it took me a while. I want to say it took me about a year to really come up with this idea. Again, pay attention to the years of composition. So once I did this, I had to keep going in that vision. I had to keep going in the fact that I don't want iTunes to sell Koyumbaba in 4 different parts. I just don't want that. I don't want Hyperion to be sold in 3 different parts. I don't. This is part of the concept album idea that I wanted to do. And try convincing a mainstream label today to not make more money off one piece, right? Koyumbaba should be 4 income streams for these companies, not with us. We fought with Universal, and we found a label that was ready to fight Universal to get Koyumbaba done as 1 track. They don't like that because they can't make as much money.
Yeah, of course.
So anyway, we fought for a while. We searched for a while, and we came to Contrastes Records largely because it's run by artists and guitarists, right? The CEO is a good friend of mine, Francisco Bernier, who's a Spanish virtuoso, world-renowned, world-class guitarist. Also spent some time in Montreal studying with Pierre back in the day when Alvaro Pierre was in Montreal. And we met through the circuit, right? Paco and I met through the classical guitar circuit, and we became friends. And then I pitched him this idea. It wasn't a eureka moment right away, but once he understood what we were trying to say, he said, yeah, sure, let's do it. Let's make this happen. And on all fronts. The packaging is well done. Everything is sleek. Everything is the way that we pretty much envisioned it, and that I had envisioned it. And being able to put my own personal word also in the booklet, you'd be surprised. Sometimes can be a challenge. Atma didn't want this back in the day. There was a certain things Atma did not want in the booklet because it didn't fit or something. And of course, you can't be too difficult, so you play ball. But I didn't have to do this with Contrastes Records.
Good.
And I'm very happy that they took on this project. And I hope that you guys go out, get it, listen to it over and over and over again, because that's what you have to do with a concept album. Sit down, shut everything else out, and listen to it from start to finish. Don't vacuum. Don't do this. Don't watch your TV screen. Don't watch Sons of Anarchy while you're listening to my recording. No, listen to my album from start to finish.
Can you play video games while listening to
God
the
damn
recording?
Nobody.
Oh shit! I think I might have been texting while editing this.
Oh man.
Anyway,
Yeah. No, I mean you can't underestimate how important it is sometimes to have artists that you work with who understand what you're trying to do. I mean,
yeah,
it's the same as working with people who know the music, like as producers and engineers, right? It's everything. I mean, that's why, for example, when you want to make a video, working with someone like Drew Henderson is so amazing, because he knows the rep, he knows what you're trying to do. You know, it's totally different experience than working with someone who not familiar with what your concept is.
look, you're not going to make any money off this, or you're not going to make a tremendous amount of money on this anyway. So it might as well be artistic.
For sure. Yeah. And plus, yeah, I mean, it's nowadays there's a lot you can do yourself too, but it also just helps to have partners who sort of get what you're doing.
Absolutely. I'm totally now against doing stuff completely on my own.
Yeah.
You have to work with others.
Yeah.
Which for me can be difficult sometimes. You know,
humans are hard
I'm
to work
very
with.
much a loner.
Yeah. But also communication can be a thing. But yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Nice. Well, is there anything any of you want to mention again, or should we just open it up for last minute questions from the audience?
I think we've gone around the idea of what noVae is.
Yeah.
And how we want people to listen to it.
Yes, exactly. But does anyone here have more questions for Pat or Adam or Harry? David Steinhardt says it's great to see a classical musician recording concept albums. There's too many guitar recital CDs. Yeah, true.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, just take your master's program and slap it onto a CD. You know, like
yeah, pretty much.
Too many of those, for sure. Yeah, I mean, I think actually, sorry, I'm going to use this as a moment to rant on one of my favorite points to make, is that I think more classical musicians should think about programming during their studies, especially that way. Because if you kind of just end your studies with a mishmash of different things that don't say anything cohesive as a program, it's like, how are you going to sell that to an audience? How are you going to sell that to a record? You know, and that doesn't say anything about you artistically as a person. I mean, this example of this CD and your former CD, Patrick, say a lot about you as an artist, right? And so that means all the world when you go play a concert or you pitch the CD to someone or whatever. And I don't think enough musicians, when they're studying, think about curating a program that way.
Well, everything is a different world.
Yeah.
The recital's a recital. The concert's a concert.
Right.
The recording is a recording. A video is a completely different thing, right? So you have to learn every one of these worlds. And what are you trying to say in a recital?
Right.
What are you trying to say on this album? Is it even an album? Or like you said before, let's just slap a master's program down.
Yeah, is it just like, here, I can play all these different kinds of music? Like,
that's a great demo.
Right.
You know, we all need this in the start of our career. But this is what social media is great for now today. I didn't have it coming up in my, youth. I'm making myself sound like I'm 82 here, but you see where I'm, us guys here are in our late 40s, guys and gals, our career started with no internet, no social media, none of this easy access to spreading my information to Japan. Mm-hmm. But now we can do it. And so this affects the way that you're going to tailor your music programs, how you're going to teach your students. And you, Michael, said it just before, right? Should we be spending time not just learning the typical canonical stuff, but also tailoring to the artist? Who is this student, or what do I think this student's going to be in the future? I've often taught my students this way. Mm-hmm. And Harry is no exception. Harry was my student for some years, and I'm the one who pushed him in certain directions, for better or for worse. And I think that the academic system needs to be open to this more, mm-hmm. right? Yeah. Not just, okay, let's work on all of the, Bach Lutz suites, and you need to do this just cause.
Yeah.
No.
The infamous just because. Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to be said for being well-rounded, but I think people do that at the expense of developing a person, like an artistic profile or Yeah.
And when it comes more specifically to classical guitar, it's right hand, right hand, right hand
Yeah.
first. Let's worry about the left hand second. I mean,
Mhm.
you're not going to have a voice without your right hand.
Yeah. True.
There's no voice. There's
Yeah.
none of the voices.
David Steinhardt is asking what whiskey is everyone drinking. I'm actually having a Leffe Belgian beer. Aberfeldy. Nice.
I'm drinking wine. Actually, it's probably from the military store.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Very classy, Adam.
Yeah.
Very classy.
Cheers.
Yeah.
I already replied, but I have this lovely Flor de Caña.
Oh,
nice.
that is so nice.
Nice.
Harry just kicked all our asses right
Yeah,
now.
that's true.
Oh,
I'm gonna stick with my PX wine, man.
Nice.
Courtesy of our good friend Toby Kuhn, the wonderful cellist who's touring the world doing
Awesome.
world music.
such
Oh,
a
yeah.
good musician Toby is.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yes.
Amazing. Yeah, Daniel Ramstein says sometimes classical musicians are terrified of actually being artists, and it's pretty messed up. True.
Yeah. Just speak your voice, man.
Yeah.
You got something in you, say it. If you don't, then find something to say.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And also you have to set yourself apart. I mean, you got to say something that's you and that's unique. If you try to say the same thing as everyone else but better, it's going to be hard, you know.
You know how petrifying it was for me to record the Usher Waltz again?
Yeah.
You know how
Yeah.
many times that piece has been recorded?
True.
If I wasn't bringing anything new to the table, I would not have put this on this record. This record probably wouldn't have happened because I wouldn't have had that piece in that time frame that I needed.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's
Yeah.
for another
Nice.
another discussion.
Well, I think we've reached a consensus on what this album is, more or less, and people have an idea now, at least a little bit.
I hope so.
So everyone, please go listen to the album, get a physical copy, listen to it digitally, all that stuff. In a dark room by yourself, not doing anything else all the way through, no interruptions.
High-end headphones.
Yes, high-end headphones. If you listen to
Good
any other kind of
sound
headphones,
system.
yeah, exactly, yeah,
No audio file.
Your
guys.
favorite beverage.
yes, exactly. This sounds like a good plan for everybody.
Michael, thank you kindly for giving us the time
No worries, it was
to
fun.
talk about this. And on all days, Canada Day.
Yeah, happy Canada Day.
It's great. My parents' anniversary also today.
Nice.
So
Oh.
shout out to my folks. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Yeah. And I hope that you guys are well and that we can get through this situation, this
Mhm,
pandemic situation that we're in very, safely
mhm.
and rationally.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So
That's
thanks
tricky.
again, Michael. It's
Thank
been a
you guys.
blast.
It's been awesome, and it's great to have the whole team here to talk about it. So, and thanks everyone for watching. Just quick shout out. I should thank my patrons, Mitchell Kotansky and Ioana, and also Michelle. You guys are amazing. And Friday, I have Elka Prince here coming on. Who's an amazing
Awesome.
Belgian guitarist. She's going to come and present about her master's research, which she did on injury prevention. Really important topic. So please tune in for
Excellent.
that. And then I think next week is Ahmed Dickinson, who is doing a new chamber music CD. So everybody tune in for those. And yeah, I'll see you guys all next time. And thanks again, Patrick, for coming on, and great CD. And
Thank you, Michael.
I hope everybody enjoys it. Okay, I'm going to